Alabama took care of LSU. They are now on a path to get to Atlanta and take on the Georgia Bulldogs in the SEC championship game. Georgia is trying to pass Alabama for the longest SEC winning streak of all time. But it could be the Crimson Tide that was the last team to defeat them. That could be the next team to defeat them. But we're not talking about that. We're not looking ahead. Saban would call that rat poison. And Chad, he's a guy full of rat poison. We're going to stick to that LSU game. We're breaking it down on the Bama Tailgate YouTube channel. Roll Tide, everybody. If you're not part of our channel, if you haven't gotten the invite to the best tailgate party on the quad, here it is right now. Over 1,700 of you guys have joined the channel since we started, and can't thank you enough. We hit 2,000. We'll do another duck race giveaway for something else cool. Last time we gave away a Jalen Hurts Daniel Moore print, and our winner, Jonathan, got that, I think, like Federal Express to his house earlier this week. So you guys could be in the next running. We're closing in on that right now. But let's talk Alabama football. Chad Anderson, I'm Mick Gillespie. Chad, last night you were at the game. Bama 42-28. You had a chance to decompress. Jalen Milroe ran it for 4 touchdowns. I compared his performance as the OG Bama fan that I am to Sean Alexander, 1996, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Alabama, upsetting, stunning LSU. Sean Alexander jumped on the scene. Gene Stallings is head coach. And I feel like this was one of those performances, a single performance. And forget about the passing, just the rushing 4 touchdowns. And then let's talk about the passing, because it wasn't a perfect game for Milroe.
No, it wasn't. And I told you earlier this morning on the phone, I didn't really want to say it to kind of, I don't know, damper the mood last night. But really, if you go back and look at that game and that tape, Milroe was phenomenal, especially with his feet. And he did a good job of moving around and creating and finding some spots. But, from the passing standpoint, he wasn't the Milroe we saw for the last month. And the Milroe we saw for the last month hit beautiful deep balls, would find guys open, would hit his targets, would put throws right on the money. And last night he had a little bit more pressure. And his passing yards statistically were still over 200. But if you go back and look and remember, he had one that was to Jace McClellan that, again, give him credit. He created, stepped up in the pocket, moved around, moved left, moved back right, and then dumped it over the top. And Jace ran 40, 50 yards. He had another one that was like the perfect touch pass up over, I think it was Perkins, to Jam Miller. He exploded for 20, 25 yards down the field. So he had a couple of plays where he made the play, but then it was yards after. But he just didn't have the deep ball. And he threw into double coverage a couple of times. There was 1 or 2 that he threw I thought for sure were going to be picked. A couple of times he was throwing on the run. He missed wide open Isaiah Bond, which was, it turned into a touchdown on that possession anyway, but that was an easy walk-in for Bond on that one. So again, Milroe, all credit due, because that's what's so great about him is he's a dual threat. He's multiple weapons, and he was all over the place with his legs, Mick. You couldn't put anything on that guy. And he was quick. He was elusive. He was explosive. Like, he would get to one point. I want to say it was one of the third quarter touchdowns, I believe. He was rolling right, and all of a sudden a small lane opened up. He cut on a dime and just exploded into the end zone from about 15 yards out. It was super impressive.
Yeah.
And having that Milroe is so important because he can beat you 2 ways. If Milroe, think about this, if he was the Milroe who had, even though they didn't admit it, I believe you were right, if he was on the 1 3/4 legs or 1.5 legs from a month ago.
Compression sleeve on the leg, Milroe.
Yeah, last night could have been a lot different because his throws were off a little bit.
Right.
But that's what makes him such a great player and a great weapon because, again, he did a terrific job of keeping the defense off balance, taking advantage when there was a lane to take off.
Right.
He saw the holes. He did a great job.
Passing wise, I felt like he had to hurry some of his throws, like he wasn't really able to step up in the pocket.
Yeah.
LSU was pressuring him, and there were 2 or 3 of those deep passes where he didn't get hit, but the pressure was there. It was like he was trying to get rid of the football so that someone didn't brush up against him.
Yeah.
And I also think LSU was trying to sell out to stop the deep pass, and that's what opened up a lot of the run lanes too. It was like, hey, you got all these true freshmen in the secondary. So what are we going to do? Okay, we're gonna just give them a lot of help, and then he took advantage of it by running. But the wide receivers are catching the ball again. Talked about that last night, and that's a good sign because we went through a spell where the guys just couldn't catch, and this feels like Alabama again, where you're talking about years and a legacy of having these wide receivers that can make a lot of plays and catch the ball. And they're doing that right now. That was a difference again in the game. And this wasn't an easy one, Chad. I mean, LSU took the lead and then Alabama had to respond. And it was a back and forth type game. You're a big Gary Danielson fan. You named your second kid after him, but he called him
just because his name is made up of the same 4 letters doesn't mean I'm a Gary Danielson fan.
But he called it a tennis match, and it did feel like a tennis match, like it felt like that. And then Alabama, basically took the 14-point lead. Dallas Turner deflected the pass. It was intercepted. And then Dallas Turner came in, and that's where I want to stop now. And I want to talk about the hit on Jaden Daniels. It's on our thumbnail. It's on our thumbnail for a reason, because there's a lot of talk. I'm going to read you a tweet from one of your other favorite guys, someone that you have always loved, and his name's Tim Brando.
He's one of the few people that has me blocked on Twitter. I'm actually blocked by Tim Brando. Yeah,
I'm going to tell you this about Tim Brando. I actually like him. He used to come on my college radio show when I was at the University of Alabama. He was a guest. He's actually to me, he's a nice guy, but I know
a nice guy, but he's a clown.
But I know that with that said, that that he's definitely not an Alabama guy.
He's the Desmond Howard of college football. Like he and Desmond are the same guy. They pull. I don't care if you pull for your team as a host. If you're a national host, I don't care that Kirk Herbstreit makes it known that he played at Ohio State or that Chris Fowler makes it known that he attended Colorado University. Like, I don't care about that. That's kind of what makes sports fun. What I hate is when guys like Brando or Dez are acting like these Tennessee and LSU fans who are so delusional that they can't speak normally. They can't just have a factual conversation because they either hate a team so much or they're defending their team too hard. That's why I don't like those two guys. It's because they can't truly sit there and make an unbiased comment. Like Desmond's still trying to defend Michigan in this cheating scandal. It's an absolute joke. So anyway, I don't mean to get off topic. That's why I can't stand guys. Well,
basically,
like Brando.
But Brando basically said he couldn't believe that they didn't call a penalty targeting on Dallas Turner for the hit. I can't find the tweet. It might have been deleted. But he, I just got off a plane. I see this, and then, and I'm watching it. And I'm the thing that I thought first off is that up until 3 years ago, that's always been a football play. He took one step and hit the quarterback. That's just how it is. And he didn't put all of his weight on Daniels, and the crown of his helmet, didn't drive the crown of his helmet into the guy. Daniels got knocked out. It was a tough play. He's a hell of a football player, but he's a thin dude. And when you take hits like that and you're his size, we had the same issue when Bryce Young was quarterback. But to say that the guy should have been kicked out of the game and that it was cheap shot and all that kind of stuff. I don't agree with that at all.
Yeah, the fact that somebody would think that's a dirty hit, there was just nothing dirty. I mean, he hit him at the point where the ball was affected by the throw, Mick, which means that if you get hit and it affects your throwing arm, then you're literally hitting a quarterback when he either still has the ball or it was barely released. So,
Right.
I get it. I told a couple of people today, I said, on from a personal foul standpoint, I could understand why it was called. I get that because it was a face mask near the head neck area. It was not a launch. It was not crown of the helmet. It was none of those things. And so when people try to say things like that, I'm like, you guys you're just flat wrong. Like
Yeah.
there's just nothing about it that's accurate. And it always drives me nuts, but I just look at that and I think same thing, Mick. And you're right. When he drove him or did not drive him to the ground, when he like wrapped him up, you can see Turner literally like as he's hitting him, like kind of roll to the side.
Yeah.
Because he's trying not to have all of his weight crack down on top of the quarterback.
Yeah.
So yeah, 100%. That one was not any kind of a dirty hit, cheap shot, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I didn't think so either. And when he was knocked out of the game, for all intents and purposes, it was over. And that's just, because no one's coming off the bench. And you realized from that point on how dynamic he is, because they had such a tough time doing anything, moving the football wise, because of the fact that they didn't have his ability to run in the game. But a win for Alabama over LSU, and now I don't know, man. This is such a big game, and you got back-to-back big games.
Yeah.
Now what do you do to, not fall victim to overlooking Kentucky on the road? I don't think you're going to overlook Auburn, but it could happen because they're not good this year. So there's a lot of stuff that Coach Saban is going to have to do mentally, but he's good at it. I hate the 11 o'clock games. I guess it's better if you're a road team going in there at 11, but so much, moving forward here. The good news, though, is that Alabama is in line now to win the SEC. They beat Kentucky, Georgia beats Ole Miss, and they're in.
And you only need one of those two to happen. You don't even need both. You just need one or the other. So if Alabama beats Kentucky or Ole Miss loses to Georgia, then Alabama's going to advance to the SEC championship game. Bama will just get the first opportunity to make it happen
because they'll have the tiebreaker.
Yeah, they have the tiebreaker. So the 11 a.m. kickoff versus the 2:30 kickoff. So Bama will have the chance to clinch it first. But I agree with you, and this is something I've been worried about for quite a while. Just looking ahead of the schedule, when we were back talking about the A&M game and leading into that week.
Mm-hmm.
I said, man, Bama's got a stretch here. You got A&M on the road. You got the sandwich game of Arkansas, Mick, that I was worried about at home. And Arkansas almost came back and made that a problem there in the fourth quarter. They did make it a problem in the fourth quarter. And then I said, after that, Bama gets the bye week to prepare for LSU. But this Kentucky game, it's just the worst spot possible on the schedule.
Yeah.
Because you play a team that, can play defense. Mark Stoops is a pretty good guy from a defensive standpoint. This Leary guy that's now at quarterback, I mean, they went on the road to Mississippi State. Not that State's tough, but it's still on the road in the SEC. State's a decent defense. They put up 27, I think it was, but they completely blew out Mississippi State. They hung in there with Tennessee in Lexington a couple of weeks ago. They're just not a doormat is all. And then you just combine that with Alabama coming off two very emotional games where, it took great second half performances to win. That's just hard. It's hard to stay up for that. I agree with you with Auburn. With Auburn, it's not the hype that concerns me in getting up for the game. It's what Reese Davis said it perfectly. It's the haunted mansion. It's the house of horrors. It's literally the
Haunted
house of
mansion.
horrors. It's the black magic. It's the voodoo. It's whatever's going on down there. That's the scary part of Auburn. Kentucky is just one that, you try to sleepwalk and you can get bit. It's we'll get into it this week, but it's one that bothers me. I don't like it.
Well, I mean, but how many of them do you like, though? I mean, you were also worried about
This team,
Arkansas. You
for
know,
good
it's
reason.
week to week, though, man.
For
I
good
mean,
reason.
that's the thing we talked about. But Nick Saban in the post-game press conference was like, "Hey, he was pretty satisfied with he got 4 quarters of football out of the offense."
Yeah,
and I think he's right about that. I'm also a little bit more weary of Alabama's defense than I was, to be honest with you. And that's just not Alabama's defense. That's any defense against any offense. You know, they've made it to where it benefits the the offensive team the way that we play football now, right? But I didn't think that they could get thrashed like Jaden Daniels was doing to him. And you know, they took advantage of the secondary, which really was the safeties. Don't have a lot of experience, good talent there on some plays. And you know, and the dual threat, you know, once you had to pull the guy up to have 5 on the line, then all of a sudden it opened up the middle of the field, and he was taking advantage of that too. And you realize, like, the offense is going to have to keep getting better, because if you get into the college football playoff, you're going to play teams that do this. You know, you may have Oregon, you may have Washington, you know, you might have to play Texas again, which I would feel very, very comfortable about a rematch with Texas. You know what I'm saying, though? Like this, what these guys are able to do, the dual threat quarterbacks, has haunted Alabama. But who's ever been good in college at stopping these guys?
Yeah, I mean, this is just a different game. I mean, Alabama just went and held LSU to the second lowest point total all season long. So really, I commend the defense and what they did, especially in the second half. They only gave up 1 touchdown. And really, that touchdown drive at the end of the first half was absolute bullshit. I mean, it happened. It shouldn't have happened. I get it that it's
the one penalty,
easy to say.
The penalty for 15 yards was just, I mean, that's ticky tack.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like that drive just, that one was dumb. You know, like, in my opinion, LSU had 3 legit touchdown drives, and that was, you know, 2 in the first half, 1 to start the second half. But that 1 to end the first half, I just kind of shrugged my shoulders at it. I think that's just kind of part of the game. It was a dumb penalty. It was a missed tackle. Nick Saban talked about it and how it was somebody going for, I can't remember if that was Downs or someone else, but somebody went for a strip instead of a tackle around the 5-yard line. And that allowed, was it Neighbors who scored that touchdown?
Yeah.
Allowed
Malik Neighbors, man.
Yeah,
We
it
had no
allowed him
answer.
to score. Yeah, it allowed him to break a tackle and score. Yeah, so I don't know. But overall, I think the defense did a terrific job in that game. Just because, again, LSU, #1 offense in the country in total yards, points per game. Alabama held them to under 19 points of what they score on average. They held them under their average total yards per game by, I think it was 60 to 80, somewhere in there. You know, just, again, second lowest point total of the year too. So I think the defense is actually pretty good. And that's just more about what the game is like today versus what it used to be like. And one thing too that does help against teams like that, you know, we haven't really talked a whole lot about, but it does help. And it helped on that drive in the fourth quarter that took 7 minutes for Alabama that got no points, is the new clock rule. Yeah, the clock doesn't stop on first downs.
You're right.
The clock doesn't stop when you go out of bounds.
Yeah.
There are those types of things now that make the game faster. And I think on average, it's cutting 8 to 10 plays somewhere in there per game in college football this year. And so when you have that, again, that just reduces the number of snaps for a team like LSU, because an offense like Alabama against a bad defense like LSU, you can bleed that clock more. You can do those things.
Yeah.
So kudos to Bama on that as well, and being able to, control the ball, control the tempo. But yeah, I don't know. I kind of like what the defense did, but I get what you're saying. I just think it's more of a byproduct of the game today.
Oh yeah, now I'm saying that. I mean, it definitely is. You got to get the interceptions. You've got to get the fourth down stops, because teams like these guys and Michael Penix in Washington, Bo Nix in Oregon, they can score a lot. They can score a lot, and you're going to need 30 just to be able to beat those type of teams. And I put LSU right in there. LSU had the number one offense in the country, but there's some other really good ones too. I just didn't think, honestly, Alabama's defense would just get riddled like Daniels was doing. And a lot of it was with the run, setting up the pass, him running. What if you played a team that actually had like a legitimate run game to go along with the quarterback running and, could throw the football? We'll see what happens. I mean, we're not there yet.
Yeah,
You got to take care of business.
LSU does have a legit run game. I think Bama did a good job of kind of shutting it down. They still had some runs. Let's see what their exact. It's actually a good question. Their rushing yards. I mean, LSU still ran for 206.
Yeah, but look,
but how much of that was Daniels?
Well, I'm going to tell you how much of it was Daniels. 163 yards of it.
Yeah,
so 24 for Diggs and 19 for Williams, and John Avery Emery. We've heard about this guy, and he's the hype machine because you keep hearing about him. Had no yards.
Yeah. So Alabama did a good job of shutting down the run there. You mentioned those teams. Like, I'm really not that afraid for Alabama if you matched up against Michigan.
Well, I haven't mentioned Michigan. You notice that?
Or Ohio State.
Haven't mentioned them either.
Yeah, and in Washington, I'm not either, because I think
you
Alabama.
Should be.
No, I think Alabama would be more physical than Washington.
You think that?
Yeah, no, I think
they're playing a tough schedule, and they move the ball.
It's Oregon. Oregon's the one that I would be worried about.
Both of them. Washington beat Oregon.
Yeah, they did, but Washington has looked very, very average.
What about Georgia? Are you worried about Georgia
with Brock Bowers? Yeah,
I mean, I was telling their fans last night, the winning streak ends if they see the Tide.
Now, I told, was it you or someone else? I told somebody today. I think it was actually Mudcat. I was telling him Georgia doesn't want to see Alabama.
No.
Like, there are times, when you look at a team, even when you're the better team, there are teams you just don't want to see.
Yeah, but I don't think they're better.
They don't want to see this Alabama team. And I'm not meaning that Alabama is going to blow them out or even win the game. I'm just saying this Alabama team is extremely dangerous for Georgia, and they're going to have a huge ass chip on their shoulder. Georgia doesn't want to see this team.
It's going to be a good one. If we get there.
It'll be a classic, especially if Bama gets there 11-1. It'll be unbelievable.
Well, plus, you know what, they're due for a loss.
Yeah.
And I think that it's coming in Atlanta. I think Bama gets there and beats them. But let's talk about this game. I thought this was interesting. Do you remember Nick Saban talking about the guys that transferred out? And he was saying, all but one of them, he could really care less about, or something like that. I don't remember the exact wording.
Yeah.
Well, he was talking to, remember, wide receiver Aaron Anderson.
Yeah, that clip's all over Twitter.
Yeah, the 5-star. You'd be playing more here than you are there. And no one really knew who he was talking about, but I have always suspected that it was this guy. And maybe this tells us that it was.
But here's the thing on that comment. This was my initial and gut reaction when he said it. Is he trying to say that Alabama's offensive weapons are weak?
No.
Because, but if you make that comment, you're admitting and saying, well, that means LSU's wide receiver core is a whole lot better than our wide receiver core, because you can't get on the field with LSU, but you'd be on the field with us.
Well,
I just thought it was a weird comment from a Saban, you don't hear him say those kinds of things.
It's not, I don't think he's looking at it like your guys are better than my guys, or my guys are better than your guys. I think he's looking at that particular player and saying, you know what? Like, remember the linebacker Sanders that transferred to
Yeah, Drew.
Arkansas?
Yeah.
And it was like, he was just thinking like, what the hell are you doing? Like, stick around here. You're gonna play here, and instead, he's getting advice from his parents, pressure, you're not playing enough, blah, blah, blah. And then, and you go get your head beat in at Arkansas, right? When you could be playing for a national championship. I think he looks at the skill set that this guy has and goes, he could probably return some punts for us. He's very shifty. We could use him in the slot. We can do different stuff with him, which is probably what he was planning on doing. The problem is, and I got to tell you, I'm going back to my Elephant in the Room podcast with Ryan Anderson, who I've really enjoyed talking football with. And he was telling us about, the time that he got sent home from the national championship game in Miami. And back then you didn't have the transfer portal, and how glad he was that he stuck it out, what he learned from that experience and what that meant for his life, and I'm like, would you transfer it? He's like, yeah, probably 3 times if I could have,
Yeah.
and I feel like that's the problem with that's the unintended consequence of, hey, look, I'm not playing today. I'm leaving. You hurt my feelings today. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
Like I'm not, so I don't know the whole situation, but I thought that was interesting. I didn't get anything like you got out of it. I got just like, hey, you're a guy that I liked, and I was going to find a way to get you in the game plan, and you were going to play a lot. And his record with 5-star prospects and turning them into NFL millionaires is untouched, by the way.
Sure it is. Sure it is. And Aaron Anderson, in case you guys are wondering as you're listening here, year to date, 2023, this year's statistics, he only has 12 receptions for 59 yards. Now, I don't know. I don't see anything that indicates he was injured for a lot of this year or anything like that, unless I'm wrong. I don't know all the details on Aaron Anderson, but for him to transfer and only get 12 receptions for the year when you're supposed to be a big time player, that's obviously very lackluster. That's not going to get you noticed by anybody when it comes to the NFL and the scouts and whatnot.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So that's going to be another year of waiting around, and who knows, he may end up being, and sometimes it takes guys a few years to get in there and make an impact. There's a lot
Sure.
more to playing football than just your ability to catch and run. Some of it's like being able to remember plays, or being able to block on certain plays and be in the right place that you're supposed to be. So I don't know all of it, but I hated to see that guy go. I thought that was a telling comment by Nick Saban, who's done it again. Took out Tennessee, took out LSU, lost to both of those teams last year, and beat both of them handily this year. And I know they were home games, but beat both of them handily.
Yeah, I mean, by the fourth quarter, both games were in hand. Yeah, that's a good way to say it. I'm still very impressed with this team and the resiliency.
Yeah, me too.
Both weeks, both games, crowds going nuts. They broke the Bryant-Denny decibel
Yeah, they didn't
meter
sit on
record
their
last
hands, I
night.
guess.
Yeah, I mean, they 113 decibels last night after Arnold with the interception.
Did you think it was loud? Did it seem like it was one of the loudest times you've been there?
There were moments, yeah, and that was definitely one of them. I thought Dixieland Delight during the Tennessee game was right up there with one of the loudest moments I've ever heard.
They needed that. They've tried to steal that song.
Well, and the reason for that one was just because of the timing and how everything kind of played out. Because with that one in the Tennessee game, Jihad Campbell had the fumble recovery return for a touchdown. They kicked the extra point. They go to commercial. Bam, they hit Dixieland Delight. So it was all like in a literally 90-second window. You go from just losing your mind to Dixieland Delight. And then, so to me, like, that's where the place was just bonkers. I mean, that's why I'd love to know what the decibel meter was for that one. But yeah, I mean, that was kudos to the crowd, because there were moments last night where they definitely had a major impact on everything.
Yeah, and that's what Nick Saban said too. He talked about the crowd and back-to-back games. And Chad, was it tough when you had to tell your family to let the people in front of them stand up and cheer? Because I know for years you were tapping people on the shoulder and asking them if they'd sit down. No, just
Yeah,
kidding.
that's me. That's me.
That's
Please
not
take a
Chad.
seat.
I'm joking, but that was the problem at the stadium, was that people had these tickets forever. And they would show up and they thought it was like a golf match or something.
Yeah, I mean, it was what I call Wednesday night church service. And that's what I've kind of described it as on social media a few times is, I grew up Baptist. So you go to Wednesday night church service. And I said, this was always the church service that, was the least attended. And everybody would just kind of, not even everybody, but the people who did show up there showed up so that they could say they went. But it was the service that always had the least amount of people. And that was kind of my take on it. It's like Wednesday night church service in Tuscaloosa every week, it felt like. And here's a good example. And I don't mean that we don't want fans or people to come to Tuscaloosa and experience what college football is really like and how awesome it can be. And by the way, Bryant-Denny Stadium does not get enough night games. Like they just don't get enough of the primetime 7 p.m. kickoff. Now, that will change with the new ABC contract because now
how is that going to change? What changes there?
Well, because CBS was always a 2:30 slot.
Right.
And CBS would get one primetime slot per year.
Right.
And so if you weren't that game, you were just SOL. But Alabama LSU always kind of fell into that perfectly. So they would be a 7 o'clock kickoff. And so you kind of get it. Bryant-Denny would basically get one night game every other year. This year was a little different too, because you had Texas at 6 p.m. because ESPN had the rights on that one. So that was kind of the deal. But, going forward with ABC and ESPN and those contract rights and everything, you're going to be in a situation where Alabama's going to have more opportunities. And you just look too, like how many times would Bama, maybe you play at 6 o'clock, but it was against like Mississippi State on the SEC network. Like I'm talking about Bama LSU, Bama Auburn, Bama Georgia, whatever, Bama Tennessee being the 7 p.m. ABC primetime game.
Right.
Like, that's going to make it that much better. So back to my point, 2 rows in front of me last night, there were some visitors in town. Perfectly fine. Come on in. Enjoy yourself.
Were they in purple?
No, they were in black and gray because they were friends, probably your friends, Mick. You're inviting these out of towners. So it's these friends that come in. And when these friends come in, Mick, they're wearing black and gray. And they're just like there for, it's like an observatory. Or what Mudcat called it, a zoo. It's like we're caged animals and we're just they're watching us. And so literally, I overhear the conversation. 2 of them are from Los Angeles. 2 of them are from San Diego. And they're in town visiting. And they've never been to a college football game.
Right.
And they want to see what it's like. And I'm like, well, great, but get your ass up. Contribute. Damn it.
Right.
Contribute. Just contribute. Do something.
Right.
And they're just sitting there. I'm like, I don't get it. What, like, just be a part of the situation.
Yeah.
So
I got you.
That was it.
Good
for
points.
Me. It just drives me crazy when people and Tuscaloosa, what some people I've heard more than just one kind of referred things to, where they say like this is a destination type situation where people want to come to just experience it, but excuse me, but they don't have that like anger and drive and desire to sit there and scream and yell and act like a fool.
Right. And that's kind of what the whole thing's about.
Yeah.
That's home field advantage.
So Mudcat, which is my brother, for those of you who don't know, he likes to act a fool. He's down there, down in the corner of the end zone, lower level near the students. And he told me this morning, he said, had I been to Galette's and had some drinks, maybe, but that's neither here nor there. He just
Some
said,
yellow
hey,
hammers. Some yellow hammers.
did he have 1 or 5? That's for somebody else to determine, But he said that he was to the point, I think he said it was in the second or third quarter, and it was a big third down. It may have been the one where Mason Taylor dropped the football down the middle. But he said that he literally just got to the point where he was angry, like literally angry at some of the fans around him. And even the students, he said they'd have their backs turned. And he's probably talking about the Greeks at this point, down there where he was sitting, and they were on their phones or back to the field and all this stuff. And he just goes, do y'all even effing care? And he's just like losing his mind because some people are sitting on their hands. And
so he was driving the crowd.
He was trying
to get focused.
Man.
He was giving him a Saban. He got the angry Saban on him.
The lecture.
Well, whatever he said got things turned around, and it was loud in there, and Alabama won, and that's it. That's it for the SEC home schedule. One more game at 11 a.m. against Chattanooga, and then that'll be it for that. But well, I'm not sure what all the injuries are. Saban will talk about that tomorrow. You and I, let's get together again tomorrow and do the press conference together if you got time.
Yeah, we'll do it. The two big ones were Lawson and Key on defense. Key had a quad injury. Lawson had the ankle injury. Saban didn't say much. Probably didn't know much about them in last night's post-game press conference. But yeah, I'm sure he'll update tomorrow, and we'll have the coverage here and do Saban's press conference live. So we'll get that rolling. Yeah,
we'll find out there and start focusing on Kentucky, which is another tough game, a road game in the SEC. Yeah. You took care of your two rivals. You beat a hungry, desperate LSU team. Now things set up for them to go to the Cheez-It Bowl to conclude their schedule. And
real quick, have you seen the bowl projections today?
No, what is it?
These are great. So they've got LSU playing Notre Dame. This is ESPN and their writers, Schleybaugh and one other person. But anyway, they have LSU and Notre Dame. One of them has them in like the, I don't know, a decent bowl, maybe like a Cotton Bowl or something. Which is interesting since they both lost, or maybe it was some other bowl. But I just thought that was fun because if they did match those two up, that's Brian Kelly against his old school.
Yeah.
So you got Brian Kelly and LSU against Notre Dame and Marcus Freeman. So that would be great theater and drama if that was to happen.
Yeah. You don't lead in with this anymore because of the college football playoff rankings that matter. It's like these don't even matter anymore. Right. But another week where Alabama just sticks at 8. They will not move Alabama up. And I know that they needed some help, but Washington, they struggled. They had to struggle win against USC, Oregon with another win, Texas, overtime win. But that doesn't seem to matter because they beat Alabama. They fell one spot in the coaches poll. But you're still not concerned at all about Alabama being at 8th?
Not right now, no. I mean, where would you move them? Like, who do they deserve to be ahead of? The only thing you could do is say Texas should be 6 and then Alabama 7 over Oregon, but you can't move Bama ahead of Texas.
Yeah, because you lost to them, right?
Right, yeah. And I don't know. I just look at these and Texas, they won in overtime, but against a ranked Kansas State team that's not bad. Washington beat USC on the road. USC's ranked or was ranked. They're not anymore. So there's really just nowhere to move them. But one, shame on Kansas State. They really screwed the pooch for Alabama yesterday. That was annoying as hell. But I just look at it, it's like there's nowhere for them to go. But these final 3 weeks, 4 weeks with conference championship weekend, they're so backloaded that it's going to be, this is when everybody beats up on everybody else. Because you got, Michigan, Penn State play this week. So there's one where it's a top 10 matchup. Georgia plays Ole Miss this week.
Yeah.
So that's another top 10.
Well, hold
matchup.
it there, because I wanted to ask you about that. Let's just, I think that we've kind of said what needs to be said. There's nowhere to move. What do you think about the Georgia Ole Miss game? Now it's 1 versus 10 in both polls, although Georgia's number 2 in the college football playoff poll. What benefits Alabama the most? Does it matter? I mean, they beat Ole Miss. They're going to have to beat Georgia. But how does this, who cares who wins? How does it benefit Alabama to have a team win?
Well, as much as this might pain Alabama fans, because there is a log jam, you need Georgia to win out. So you're a Georgia fan. And then after Ole Miss loses to Georgia, you need Ole Miss to win out, which I think they will, because they play a no-name team in the Mississippi State. You need LSU to beat Florida, beat the Cupcake Week, and then beat Texas A&M, which they should win all 3 of those. You need Tennessee to win out. Well, not win out because they play Georgia, but you need Tennessee to beat Missouri because you didn't play Missouri. So you need Tennessee to beat Missouri so that they stay ranked. And by the end of it, Mick, if you look at it, Alabama would have wins if all things go as planned. They would have wins over Georgia, Ole Miss, Tennessee, LSU, 4 ranked opponents.
Right.
And how can you ignore that? 4 ranked opponents that you would have victories over. One of those being the number 1 team in the country who won 30 straight before you played them. So to me, that, like, you look at Oregon's schedule, what has Oregon done?
Hey, if they win 30 straight, that if they win 30 straight, they're passing Alabama for the longest SEC win streak.
Yeah, what was it, 28 before?
Yeah, so they're closing in on that, right?
Yeah, but
they've done it a couple times.
Everybody else's resume won't stack against Alabama's. So if Alabama gets in a 1-loss situation against another 1-loss team, other than Texas, Alabama will have the better resume than everyone else. So that's why I'm not still worried about style points. Because if Bama ends up tied with some teams, any team other than Texas, Bama gets the nod, in my opinion.
Okay, well, we'll find out. A note, that I just got handed to me. I was talking about Bama's defense and just defense in general, the game in general. Second half points allowed by Alabama's defense this year: 3 to Ole Miss, 3 to Texas A&M, none to Tennessee, 7 to LSU. And I know Jaden Daniels got hurt, and that factored in. I think that there's a chance he probably would have scored some more touchdowns, right? even if, maybe, right? And I honestly, if he would have stayed in the game, Alabama goes for it on 4th down and doesn't try to kick field goals, with Will Reichert, who actually missed twice in one game. But we're not going to talk about that. Still, the defense definitely making adjustments. Kevin Steele feels like a much different animal than Pete Golding this year. You and I talked about that, but just kind of some final nuggets there on this Alabama LSU game. How do you celebrate beating LSU?
I mean, you eat gumbo. What do you do? What do you eat? Corn dogs? I mean, what do you do? I mean, it's always nice. It's crazy, to think as good as LSU has been. Think about that. That's one thing I think of sometimes. Bama whipping Tennessee's ass for all those years. I mean, that's awesome and that's great. But Tennessee had some really, really bad teams in there.
Right.
Derek Dooley, Butch Jones, Jeremy Pruitt. They had some awful teams in the mix. LSU, though, they've had loaded teams.
Right.
Loaded teams. And LSU, Saban is now 13-5 against the Tigers. So to me, that's just so impressive to win 13 out of 18 against a team that was, when Saban got to Tuscaloosa, won a national title in his first year, has won the SEC West, 2 or 3 other times. And they're always a top, 10, 15 team at worst when they play Alabama. So to me, to be 13-5, I always kind of look at that LSU game as it was a dogfight.
Yeah.
It was a hard game, but damn, what an amazing job to go 13-5 against that team.
Yep. 13-5 at Alabama, 13-6 as a coach. But yeah, you're right. I mean, and when you lose, it's not like blowouts. They won in 2019. They had one of the best teams they've ever had, the Tigers, and Alabama lost by less than a touchdown. And then last year, which I felt like was a fluke win for them, was on a 2-point conversion in overtime, and Brian Kelly rolling the dice, and it paid off. And O'Brien, one of the most generic offense game plans you ever saw. They did a good job with the game plan again yesterday. All right, Chad. Well, that does it for us. A rollback win for Alabama. They get ready for Kentucky. We'll be here tomorrow for the press conference. We'll hear what Nick Saban has to say as he tries to redirect the troops and get them ready for a trip to Lexington, a rare visit to the Bourbon State. I don't know if it's really the Bourbon State. Oh, it's the Bluegrass State? Yeah. No, it's the Bourbon State to me. And we'll talk about that. If you're not part of what we do on this channel, here's the invite to the tailgate party. Roll Tide, everybody.